Dawn, 25 September 2022, Economy, Chinese slavery and the bitter fruits of privatization in Pakistan. The assets of Pakistan should not be sold to China since they are enslaving the country. Privatization of telecom businesses has increasingly become a strategy to accomplish this goal as the Internet revolution of the 21st century demands improved service and communication. State-owned businesses have expanded from locally based small to medium-sized enterprises to global behemoths, particularly in the telecom industry. Only a few successful examples of state-owned corporations investing in the global telecom industry are Huawei, initially held by the Chinese military, Norway's Nortel, China Mobile, Deustche Telekom more commonly known as T-Mobile, formerly the state-owned Bundespost, and Etisalat. It is, therefore, intriguing to consider why privatization has not benefited Pakistan, whose telecom industry is said to have experienced tremendous growth over the previous few years. The privatization story of Pakistan Telecommunication Company Limited, PTCL, reads like a business crime novel. The General Pervez Musharraf Shaukat Aziz hybrid government privatized numerous state-owned mega-enterprises in 2005, including PTCL, which at the time had a value that was comfortably in the billions of millions. This incident made front-page headlines because the cops assaulted thousands of protesting employees until they were bloody. Anti-terrorism legislation was used to charge the demonstrators all at once. The PTCL staff fought intensely against privatization because they were concerned about widespread layoffs. Despite being able to drop the criminal charges, the government and the new PTCL administration forced the employees to endure the trials of a penal criminal justice system. Unlike Pakistan International Airlines, PIA, and Pakistan Steel Mills, PTCL was not considered a sick unit. However, ruthless crackdowns were implemented to coerce telecom business employees into accepting harsh and unjust dismissals. Second, how the corporation was given to UAE-based Etisalat, the highest bidder among the three participants, China Mobile and Singapore's Singtel, was suspicious and covert, necessitating further inquiry. The majority of the finance was raised in Pakistan through various banks, defying the myth propagated at the time that the project required foreign direct investment. This was contrary to government ministers' claims that foreign investment was an excellent way to stimulate the economy. The contract between the President of Pakistan and Etisalat is blatantly illegal, which is more disturbing and exciting. Etisalat withdrew from the agreement that secured them a 26% interest after the June 2005 auction after being named the highest bidder. This gave it a majority of 5 votes to 4 on the board of directors. As a result, its 10% deposit was forfeited, and the privatization process ended without the management being transferred as required under the original agreement. Without conducting any additional tendering, a new agreement was struck with Etisalat on March 16, 2006. The second deal was secretly negotiated without the participation of the other 2 bidders in the auction that was held in June 2005. This made the entire process debatable and vulnerable to judicial review, both legally and morally. The agreement was so one-sided that it included accepting Etisalat's demands that were not included in the original deal, particularly the right to dispose of PTCL's assets and properties scattered across the country, roughly 3,300 in total, despite violating the widely publicized terms and conditions of the auction. The deposit, which had been rightfully forfeited due to PTCL's refusal to sign the original agreement, was not only reinstated through the back door but a sweetener in the form of $50 million per year was also agreed upon for Etisalat's visiting technical experts for 5 years, which mysteriously continued for 10 years. Any unbiased observer would see Etisalat's coddling and the state's overly protective stance with concern and trepidation. After a gap of 17 years, PTCL has only paid $1.8 billion to Pakistan out of the total agreed amount of $2.59 billion. This is evidence that the agreement was poorly managed by too accommodating Etisalat at the expense of two other bidders. Due to a disagreement with the Pakistani government on the transfer of property, it has withheld about $800 million. Disputes also arose regarding the ownership of some evacuee properties and those held by the armed forces. Still, the fact remains that the deal wouldn't have sounded as unfair to the government of Pakistan if the right to dispose of PTCL property hadn't been illegally conceded under the second agreement. The public was misled into believing that an illegally granted right to dispose of PTCL-owned properties through the second agreement came about as a consequence of an auction, even if it wasn't transparent. It is interesting to notice that $1,213,767,537.12 in 2022 will have the same purchasing power as $800 million in 2005. This sum is comparable to the 3 to 4 year foreign investment in Pakistan's telecom sector. The state should reconsider such foolish actions taken in the past, which may go towards upgrading digital services judged appropriate for addressing 21st century concerns, rather than mindlessly privatizing a national icon like PTCL through a shady and opaque procedure on blatantly unfavorable terms. Although there are safeguards in place today to prevent foreign operators from accessing official government communications and sensitive data related to defense in any domestic telecom sector, through the National Telecommunication Corporation or NTC in Pakistan, nations like the US, the UK, and some in Western Europe are exercising extreme caution. For instance, the U.S. government has been keeping a close eye on the Chinese telecom giant Huawei because the Biden administration is looking into its operations because of concerns that U.S. cell towers using its equipment might be able to obtain sensitive information from military bases and missile silos, which Huawei might then transmit to China given that the company has its roots in the Chinese military. While developing nations like Pakistan may not have that luxury in the absence of equal alternatives but must remove all Chinese equipment, the UK and other Western allies of the US may be required, either legally or morally, to remove all of the Chinese firms' equipment from core networks. It is asking a lot to expect a dysfunctional and excessively bureaucratic state like Pakistan to adopt all the technology developments overnight in a quickly evolving global telecom business. However, rectifying historical wrongs like the PTCL scandal can be a step toward establishing a more equitable and open procedure for issues in the telecom industry. The Supreme Court, however, put an end to that notion by recently dismissing the appeal challenging the privatization of PTCL and giving the second accord the status of a stand-alone agreement, making it beyond the purview of the authority of any court, let alone the Supreme Court.